I think the trap that some people fall into mainly because of the hype is that they think they can just say, give me a system that does X. X is a very short sentence, and they're expecting enter to hit enter and get a system out. I don't think it's quite that simple. And so that's why we have a more elaborated SDLC to make sure that we're extracting value from the AI without becoming, so dependent on it. We lose the capability to think for ourselves. I think we should realize that we're still in a transition phase. We don't really know what the ultimate cost of this will be. To simplify things for senior leaders, I would say focus on the know-how of your team and the infrastructure that makes things smoother. If your team is driving on a dirt road versus a highway, you're going to notice productivity differences between those teams, and it may not be entirely in their control. So look for opportunities like that to help people be more productive. So those are the two things.
Hello and welcome to HTEC Today. My name is Sava Marinkovich, and we're going to be covering AI and the software development lifecycle, or SDLC as it's commonly referred to. And we're going to dive into whether is there a real transformation happening, or is there turmoil right now and people trying to figure out what's going on with AI when we're thinking about making products and software and seeing how to apply. There's been many statistics saying that 80% of the effort gets accelerated, but it's taking the same amount of time in the end for that last 20% to work. So today we're going to address, is AI accelerating value, or is it just accelerating kind of disorder? And with us today is Tim Sears, HTEC's Chief AI Officer. Tim, thank you for joining today. I wanted to start off with basically saying, how is AI fundamentally reshaping SDLC? What's the good in it? What's happening that is causing all this excitement about using AI in SDLC?
Well, essentially, people started using AI tools to help write code a couple of years ago, maybe some early adopters a little bit sooner than that. But, and in that time, tools have improved really dramatically. And so people were excited about the potential then, but, saw some drawbacks, and, certain folks adopted kind of on an individual basis mostly. Now we're at the point where we can see entire teams using it and using it together, which is really, I think we're going to get into that a little bit. And the potential is there, and actually the tools continue to improve. So, it's a very rosy future for using AI as part of an SDLC. And we're it's causing a lot of stir and a lot of change management issues, because the way we think about developing software is changing dramatically and will continue to change dramatically. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later.
How is that changing? Like, what, from an executive's perspective and from the people who are kind of leading these projects in SDLC, why is it changing now? I mean, people are saying it's accelerating and the tools are getting better and better, but does this mean they're 10xing? They're going to do stuff faster? Are they going to do things better? Like, why is there a stir around it?
Well, it's clearly a technological advance that will make things better. But and so we can assume that we're going to get benefits from it almost no matter how you deploy it. But that's not really the game in business. The game in business is to, be on the frontier of using things in the best possible way. And when we're doing that, we're going to find that the trade-offs that we used to see in how we structured software development are a little bit different now, because AI changes the emphasis dramatically.
In which way? Can you give an example?
Sure. I think what's happening now is, what used to happen in olden days when I began my career was we had to be super careful in specifying what was needed so that the software engineer was working on the right thing and they didn't have to rewrite it 5 times. AI can write things 5 times, 10 times. It doesn't really matter. You can just keep hitting enter, so to speak, and you can re-execute all you want. So that's a very significant change. The real challenge was in olden days, like last couple of years ago, was to make sure that we had clarity in terms of requirements documents and things like that before you ever got the engineers involved, threw it over the wall to an engineering team and then built the product. Now all that can kind of happen at once, and but the real emphasis now on getting clarity around the requirements. But you can do that in a much more iterative way, which opens up a lot of possibilities in how teams can and should work together.
So rewrites are becoming cheaper, actually. So people can kind of modify these things. But is there, does that change what's important in the SDLC?
I think it changes how you get to what's important. I think now we have the ability to iterate. Software has always been a thing that we could iterate, and we've taken advantage of that with things like Agile, where you just build something and then iterate to success. You can essentially double down, triple down on that philosophy. You don't necessarily need all the specs going in, but you do need a team of experts who can provide their bits and pieces of the clarity that's needed. Everybody from designers at one end of the project and maybe even business leaders, specifying certain pieces that can actually feed the process, and engineers and security experts and network experts and database experts. Those folks are still needed. The AI can do a lot more, and the role of the people is more in providing the input and the clarity and the vision, and also validating what comes out to the extent that the systems can't be validated by themselves.
But so it sounds like there's a lot of value generated with using these AI tools properly. But what's the struggle? Why is there still problems? Why isn't everyone just doing it?
Well, I think it's a great question. It's been a bit of a topic of conversation for a couple of years now. One is that there's several factors going on. One is that our software engineers are experts. They've trained their craft, and craftsmen believe in craft. And there's some innate resistance, human nature being what it is. There has been some innate resistance. At the same time, there's been early adopters. A lot of the early adopters are really focused on making their own product, having more fun on the job, being more productive by themselves, not necessarily thinking about things in a team point of view. I know one super hot startup, I won't say the name, but tons of their engineers have adopted AI to help write code. And they'll all sit there in their own little silo using AI to write code. And it's certainly helpful and making them productive. But it isn't necessarily used on a group basis. And I think that, in the enterprise where everything is teamwork and there's always boundaries and organizations that need to be bridged, cross-functional, getting the cross-functional aspects of life in big companies to work means that we need an SDLC that works kind of, I don't want to say at scale, but cross-functionally enough so that all of the aspects of the project can be brought to bear, and the SDLC can get all of the clarity that's needed. That's why you see a lot of things that are proof of concept, and people that used to be technical and are semi-technical now can actually write nice POCs and make really effective demos, but they still have a lot of problems getting things into production because the SDLC did not include enough people.
So is it something that the organizations have to rethink when they're approaching projects now with SDLCs? Because anyone can generate code or specs now quickly. They can doesn't, but if everyone's doing it, that's not a real advantage strategically. So what changes? What becomes the new bottleneck here? What becomes the missing link for enterprises? Or missing links? Like, what are some of the considerations now when they're thinking about this? Because there's a lot of money poured into AI. Every enterprise is pouring money. You use Cloud Code, use these coding LLMs and everything. So what becomes the advantage in those?
Well, let me say something to business leaders that are leading teams that need to use an SDLC to be productive. And this could sound philosophical and maybe a little bit theoretical, but it's meant in the most practical way possible, which is the emphasis of all of the work now needs to shift from protecting valuable resources to make sure they're writing the right code and checking it in at the right pace, to making sure your team is able to understand the business problem, state it clearly, and always in the form of a hypothesis that can be revised so you can, as you learn more, at whatever stage of the project, you can improve. And so it's really the search for clarity and vision and making that expressed in a way that the AI can take advantage of it and actually produce what you want. The power is there, but it may not be immediately visible. I think this situation will actually improve over time. That will get easier. But the challenge on getting super high productivity in producing enterprise grade software is making it an SDLC that has all of the right people providing the right input, not necessarily at a low level of technical detail as it used to be needed. So the search for clarity is paramount here. Clarity and vision. The business folks need to be even closer to technical development than they ever were.
Your comment about hypothesis approach and hypothesis testing sounds very entrepreneurial. Is the mindset needed to be different now with some of these tools? And how does that compare with the traditional kind of rigor that engineering organizations are used to and need to, especially in kind of critical or regulated industries?
Rigor is important and, something we value, it's a technical expertise, all that sort of thing is still important, but it needs to be combined with iteration. So when I say hypothesis, that's something that you hold temporarily, you learn something, you change. The beauty of software, and especially, over the past few decades, we've learned to do software better. The main way we've learned to do things better is by iterating the code. Now we're going to be iterating our vision and iterating the clarity to have it be even more effective. Think about it this way. You talk about sort of enterprise software. Whatever is going on in the SaaS world is fine, but we're still going to be using enterprise software. Somebody's going to be writing it. Somebody's going to be using it. We kind of settle now. We settle for, something that's 60, 70% of what we need, and we adjust our business processes to maybe make use of a vendor product. That's fine. I think we're in a world now where we can, the highly competitive companies will expect all of their software to be perfect. That sounds super strong, but now, and it is super strong in the old economics where, enterprise software engineers were few and far between, or, much more precious resource. Now what we need, and now we can essentially keep iterating until the software does exactly what we need. And that level of perfectionism, I think, will define competitive companies in the future.
So so there's speed in execution and there's rigor of what you're saying in terms of getting these out, and that iteration sits between those two kind of points of rigor and speed. So is the SDLC, what's different in that perspective in the AI SDLC? Are there checkpoints? Is it gating? Where's the human element of this, and what are organizations doing right and wrong?
Well, it's an interesting question, Sava, because I think that there may be a lack of consensus in the marketplace right now. We have our own views inside of HTEC. Obviously, they're the best, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be holding them. But and we also see other people with different points of view. There may be elements to everybody's points of view that are part of the ultimate solution here. But what I'm saying is really that we don't expect the AI to do everything. We expect a role for humans. We all have to own the output of the AI, and our ability to validate and check and own essentially what comes out of AI is still paramount. Otherwise, we really shouldn't be deploying software we really don't know what it does, and it hasn't been vetted. We shouldn't be deploying that type of product. But what we're looking at is a world where the team is providing the clarity and vision, and the AI is the arms and legs cranking out the code.
That's great, and then that enables kind of the more attention to the clarity and the vision on the business cases.
Yeah, and I keep emphasizing that because I think as powerful as the tools are, there's a human gating process that is needed. We believe that gating process needs to be teamwork oriented, like most great businesses still operate as great teams. And so how do we get teams to own what the AI is producing and still get the AI to produce a lot, right? And so that is that's the goal here. I've seen folks proposing SDLCs where the bots will just keep iterating and iterating, and maybe they'll get there. But I think they'll only get there to the extent the input was clear enough. And so you could burn a lot of tokens, or you could end up just failing because the bots aren't quite smart enough. I think the situation will continue to evolve, of course, as tools improve.
So from a tool perspective, I know in terms of success from an SDLC approach, you've spoken a lot about this being, it's like a delivery infrastructure, if I could kind of coin it, that this AI SDLC is much more about about not just these steps anymore, but what's connected and what's traceable, and how does that impact across the end to end? What's new and different there that is essential in these AI SDLCs versus what you said, where individuals are just using tools along the way and getting some merit of result?
Yeah. Okay, so let's look under the hood of the HTEC's SDLC approach, which, as I said, is team oriented. There's a lot more to it, as you well know, Sava. So what we'll see. Let's start with what an individual developer might do. They might end up in a chatbot or have the tool integrated into an IDE, write some code, have some conversations. The amount of input that they're giving is the AI model is relatively small, and it's kind of throwaway. People aren't necessarily tracking it and keeping track of it. It's just sort of like, let's just keep going until it's done. In a more organized approach, essentially, you've got to have the clarity, as I've mentioned a few times now, is really embodied in a set of documents that can be markdown documents that are always available to the AI. The AI is also being controlled in terms of how much rope you give it, how many steps are we going to take down the road. If there's a bit of a structure to it, you can actually get more reliable output from the AI. So, for example, you go through a planning phase, and then you go through various steps. And there's a bit of a controlled process for producing the project, and you don't get the full product until the end. And that the reason for that is that you can validate, how well the system is functioning along the way. And if something went wrong or more clarity is needed, you can essentially back up. So this is akin to, in software development, just checkpointing things and rolling back when there's mistakes. And so essentially a version of that works on the level of human language. That human language is all capturing the utterances of the team about their areas of expertise and their goals for the project. Those are the things that we are capturing, refining, preserving, and using to help the AI take the next step. And so that process is, when you hear HTEC talk about the process, it's very team-oriented, but it's relying heavily on AI. So we're able to produce very complex projects much, much faster than we would have without lengthy discovery phases.
That's really interesting about what you're mentioning on capturing. So Claude Code is the buzz as of when it was released months ago. And people now are kind of capturing these skills. They're saying like, okay, our engineers now are 10x and they could do this much better. And they're like, now with Claude Code, we could do everything. Or insert your coding LLM here. Why is that? Why is that effective, and why is it also a trap? Why is that? It's a big buzz and it empowers a lot, but how does that fit into this process, and why is that a trap? Potentially.
Well, there's been tremendous excitement about AI, and honestly, it's fed a lot of hype, right? And so everybody in the world is interested in the business world is interested in AI. And, the levels of expertise vary a lot. And there's a lot of noise in the system as a result of that. So I think I share the excitement, but the hype is actually a negative, I think, in terms of helping us figure out the right next move. What's going on is a situation where the tools are useful. I lost my train of thought there.
So basically, it's what's happening with what's the trap of these tools like Claude Code, and there's a capturing aspect in there. You can capture skills, you can capture all these things in there. But what's also the trap? Why is it giving a false sense of security in some enterprises or organizations that say like, look, we can now do this all ourselves?
I don't know if there's a trap, but I think there's still a journey that everybody's on in terms of learning how to use the tools and what tools will be the best. So, for example, Claude Code, very popular today, but there are other tools out there, and that's always been a bit of a horse race. Maybe that horse race continues. It's March 26, 2026. In 6 months, maybe there's another model that's a bit more popular. I think we we should be thinking about this as from a higher level and figuring out how to use whatever tool is the best. And there may be specialties at some point. So we should not be getting overly wedded to a particular platform or a particular model. We should have some flexibility because things will continue to change. And I think the trap that some people fall into, mainly because of the hype, is that they think they can just say, give me a system that does X. X is a very short sentence, and they're expecting enter to hit enter and get a system out. I don't think it's quite that simple. And so that's why we have a more elaborated SDLC to make sure that we're extracting value from the AI without becoming, so dependent on it. We lose the capability to think for ourselves.
That's interesting. So moving into kind of, the traditional enterprise software model, is that, how much of that is at risk? So there's been a lot of talk of SaaS busting, and people are kind of like creating their own kind of custom software. And now you have a new process that is very different from the traditional legacy software development lifecycle, which took many, many, kind of years, not years, but a much longer time. And so what's at risk now on these enterprise models? How are they changing? Is it just new value? Is it just speed? Is it something else that's happening in how they're thinking about kind of enterprise software and delivering?
Yeah, I mean, we're entering a world, or maybe we're already well into a world where buy versus build is sort of back in vogue in terms of a decision to think about. We have, I don't want to comment on SaaS companies and business models and things like that. Essentially, that may evolve, and what SaaS companies do will evolve, and the marketplace will evolve. But I think we'll always be in a world where people are using enterprise software. We're entering a world where that software can be better and better. And who's writing that software, who's paying for it, and who's building it, that could change a little bit. There's a lot more opportunity, I think, for companies to think about gaps in vendor products and actually be able to perfect the software that they're using without having to worry too much about what SaaS companies do, which is to amortize development costs across a large customer base. The costs of developing enterprise software are, in a way, dropping dramatically. And so that you can think about, if my software stack was perfect, what would it look like? This is not a crazy pie in the sky idea anymore. It's actually a reality. And many of our clients are doing exactly that.
So when you're thinking about that, then what is the when they're operationalizing AI into their enterprises, is this something that is a competitive asset, or is it just you have to do it to stay with the market? Like, is there a differentiator that's possible?
Kind of a deep question, Sava. I think that everything that looks like a competitive advantage that's come along in my lifetime has become table stakes at one point or another. And so you can have an edge in terms of how you build things or what you're building. And, that may well be a real edge at some point. And then later on, everybody has caught up and, the game has changed a bit. So I think it's just, as professionals thinking about software development, it's incumbent on us to keep up and do things in the best way possible and think deeply about what is the right way to build things. And that, whether it's a competitive edge or table stakes, we'll still be in the game, and that'll be good enough.
Great. And then, so now from an executive perspective and from a board perspective, when we're thinking about this impact, since 2023, AI has been the board topic du jour almost universally on this one. And now it's 3 years later, and now there's getting into maturity in here. There's a lot of talk to say AI has finally found its value. How can, and now the new equation comes in, which is the cost of these models. So we weren't tangibly able to look at the cost of using some of these agents and some of these models, and now the bills are coming due as they're coming in. And so how now in 2026, how should kind of CTOs and CFOs, because now there's an evolution in this kind of dynamic. How should they think about it when they're looking at AI and their internal SDLCs and how they're developing software, as well as partnering with people when that might have better kind of capabilities and skills and experience?
Really interesting question. Let me try to break it down. First of all, thinking about leadership, I mean, they saw the leadership at the very top has seen the potential impact for AI. They're looking around the corner almost and really pushing it. I think the challenge for many organizations is, getting that message, percolated all the way down and changing people's behavior. Everybody involved in this has to learn something new. That varies, and different organizations have a different capacity for that, different individuals, of course. And so that accounts for why, the pace of change varies quite a bit across different companies. Now I lost my train of thought on the multi-part project. What was the second bit?
Well, between CTOs and CFOs, how do they have to think differently?
Okay, yeah. So clearly folks are looking at the cost of these tools and realizing that they're not free. You have folks like Jensen saying, everybody should be spending six figures. Every developer should be spending six figures on tokens. Of course, he would like the world like that. And so I think we should realize that we're still in a transition phase. We don't really know what the ultimate cost of this will be. I can guarantee you that it will drop dramatically. We're learning. Large models are pushing the capabilities of what can be done, and then always, and that's really the most important thing in any technical enterprise is getting it right, getting it good, and then you figure out how to lower the costs. And over time, we will get smarter and smarter and smarter. Some of our clients are working on all kinds of clever ways to help folks manage the costs. The cost of inference is dropping dramatically. I think if you look at NVIDIA's purchase of Grok recently, last year, purchase of Grok technology, that's a sign that they're very focused on lowering inference cost and improving the experience. And so this world of heterogeneous compute for inference and model proliferation will make it more complex. But as we gain confidence in using the tools and matching the right tool to the job, I don't think that inference cost is going to be the dominating factor. It's going to be like another utility. It's going to be a factor in the cost, but it's not going to dominate the cost of developing enterprise software, I suspect. So I'm not so worried about that. Obviously, in the short term, CFOs need to watch the bottom line, and there may be increased budget needed for tokens right now. I think I feel sorry for the CFOs out there, but it's a blip that will manage very quickly.
I'm going to do two little branches here right now. The first one is I'm going to kind of do a summary of this, but then I want to just have an open, kind of more free-form exploration of ideas that may or may not be used within this episode of HTEC Today. But the first one is that if everyone's using SDLCs? This is more kind of a strategy perspective now with organizations. There was a recent Sequoia article talking about how service firms are actually now delivering these processes as the product, and there's a change in there, and they're kind of investing in ventures that are trying to hack away at the SDLCs very rapidly and then offer those. And so the argument is that there's judgment versus intelligence. So you can have intelligence about how to build the code and the process, but what wins is going to be the judgment. So when you're looking at the judgment on the SDLC, how much weight do you put on that in today, and just from a practical perspective? Because a lot of these are very forward-thinking bets that VCs like Sequoia are making. But what's your view on this one from a practical perspective? Because those ventures are hacking away. They're realizing the potential of these tools, but they're still early stage. And so when an enterprise is thinking about these things, how do they compete? Are those new ventures going to become part of their toolbox? Is it going to change what's happening inside their organizations or how they partner with people? Very broad forward question, so nothing easy today.
That's okay. I think for me, it comes down to know-how and infrastructure. You need a team that knows how to do what they need to do. And, we've already pointed out a few times that needs to be a diversity of skills, possibly cross-functional as well. And that's really the kind of put that know-how together and you can have more effective teams. You have to support those teams with infrastructure. So a very basic one is, access to the AI models. Everybody's turning on licenses and people are providing API access so they can switch models very easily, things like that. To some extent, an SDLC can be embodied in a tool and an infrastructure. But to be honest, I'm not impressed with how complicated the SDLCs actually are. They're not, I haven't seen one where you couldn't reproduce it on yourself in generic tools with a pretty light effort. I don't think that that's a thing that needs to be focused on dramatically. The know-how of your team, expertise is still in your domain, still matters. These models aren't all trained on every industry yet, things like that. That know-how is important. Infrastructure remains important beyond access to tools, access to data. Big organizations have data over here that needs to get over there to be used by leadership's making decisions or an AI model trying to automate something. And so that effort is often expensive and requires senior leadership to be involved. So to simplify things for senior leaders, I would say focus on the know-how of your team and the infrastructure that makes things smoother. If your team is driving on a dirt road versus a highway, you're going to notice productivity differences between those teams, and it may not be entirely in their control. So look for opportunities like that to help people be more productive. So those are the two things. SDLCs themselves are exciting and interesting and creative and a little bit complex. But at the end of the day, once the mystery is stripped away, it will be just another form of software in a way, maybe written in Markdown instead of Python.
And you want the best teams working on it in that case, no matter what.
People matter. People will continue to matter, maybe even more so if highly productive people making even more important decisions now, and maybe somewhat fewer of them. That means they're just more important, the ones that you have. So your teamwork and the know-how of your team, critically important to your competitive advantage.
Thank you, Tim. So in closing, AI is here. AI is part of software. It's not the question whether software will change. It has been changing right now, and it will continue to change. And so the critical question right now is how organizations are going to put that AI into theirs and how to really think of novel ways, AI native ways of adopting these processes to help them build and maintain their new kind of emergent approaches towards software and how they interact with their clients in the business. And so the difference, though, is that enterprises can do many, many pilots, but getting those in a sustainable production that has an innovative and competitive advantage are very different. And if organizations aren't paying attention to the right things that are coming in, then they're going to have a lot of opportunity cost as a result of that. So this is another episode of HTEC Today on AI and SDLC. We thank Tim, Chief AI Officer for HTEC, for your comments today, and looking forward to our next episode. Thank you.